All right, so if you have decided to start playing Enshrouded in 2026, you may have noticed some things. First off, a lot of the guides out there, especially the new player guides, including my own, are not up to date. After Update 8 dropped in April, the 0.8 release of Enshrouded, a lot of things changed and a lot of things got overhauled. So if you are looking for a beginner guide, this one is going to be as up to date as possible on the game as it is today. So I'm going to work through all the basics of the game so that you have a good idea of what the game is about, what you need to do to get started, and how you can find your fun. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Enshrouded content. So what is Enshrouded? That is kind of like a open-ended question because there's a lot of different aspects to it that are unique in the survival world as well as the action RPG. So in that sense, that kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. It is a survival game, a handcrafted survival world that has ARPG skill depth to a degree, as well as a heavy base building loop. The main aspect of this game is the Shroud. This is kind of like the big threat, the big bad of the game, what kind of moves the story and where you're at. It's a fog that essentially when you walk into it, it starts ticking down a timer. Once that timer hits 0, you'll die inside the Shroud. That's kind of the idea. Early on, you're not going to be able to last too long, but there are ways that you can eventually upgrade so that you can last much longer and explore the fog. And what's really beautiful about this game is that it is very good for being able to pick up and put down because you can save your own individual world and progress at your own. The game is also a lot of fun with other players. However, it does offer a lot of the options of just being able to put in meaningful progression within a very short period of time. So you can pick up and put this game down as often as you would like, and it's still going to be as good. You could also end up joining other players with their adventure sharing, which just came in with Update 8. Is basically you can download other players' worlds and explore them. It's pretty cool. So the next big aspect that I want to talk about is the flame altar. This is central to essentially everything within your own base and how you are progressing with the game. So first off, the flame altar is essentially a marker of where your base can be built. You can't build a base outside of your flame altar's radius. You can upgrade the flame altar and get larger radius, but essentially this is where you can drop off all your materials. You can house some of the survivors that you're going to get. You're going to be able to build your base around this particular area, as well as being able to use them as fast teleport, fast travel from one place to the next. So every flame altar doubles down as a potential spot to build a base, as well as a quick travel option. Also, something that came along with the Update 8 is that you will be able to use the magical chests, which essentially, if the magic chests are built inside your base, you'll be able to pull the resources directly from those while you were building. So you no longer have to keep everything in your inventory and working off of that. As well as there is a new auto deposit loot for those chests. I mean, it works out phenomenally. It just really helps out, speeds up your process. You don't have to auto click everything. It just automatically puts everything. You don't have to worry about it. Your first session really with Enshrouded, what they're going to ask you to do is build your altar, get it to level 2, get one of the survivors, the blacksmith. That's basically what you'll end up doing here in the first initial loop of your flame altar. As you go ahead and level and you start doing other aspects of the game, especially clearing out your first elixir well, you are going to get into the skill tree. Now, the skill tree is possibly the biggest change, we'll say probably the biggest change of Update 8. Right now, if you are a returning player, if you have already played Enshrouded at some point and you come back, your entire skill tree got reset. Everything got sent back to the beginning because they've updated a lot of different aspects and they have moved a lot of different things around. One of the biggest updates that I always like to point out is double jump. Double jump is without a doubt one of my favorite skills in this game. It is a skill that I use for everything. I love that. It is 10 for 10 recommend. Double jump makes everything a lot easier, and it's put smack dab into the middle. You don't have to worry about going anywhere else forward or going into the athlete train, nothing like that. It's right there, you grab it. Now, the other big change is the upgradable skills. Instead of just being a single spot to be allocated or skill points to be allocated to that one node for the skill to be unlocked, you can actually level them up so that you get more effect and upgrade them essentially for more power. And this also allows you to simply put in a point to get to the outer tree faster. So you can essentially just upgrade one really good skill or one really good bonus, but you could also just kind of glaze through it to get to connecting skill tree points that are going to make your build a lot better. So another one of the big changes that came along with the skill tree, and it's kind of like tied to the skill tree, is the idea of the focus skills and the special ability system that they've had. This rolled out with update 8. The regular attacks will end up building up a focus bar, which is down here on the base of your UI. You spend that focus bar to use a crazy strong, devastating, like special attack, which is available for each one of the weapons. Each one has its own unique ability. Now, it must be unlocked into the tree, which is very important, but it makes the early game a heck of a lot more engaging, the combat a lot more, we'll say, fun and strategic in that sense. And it's just really, really good. Now, I will also make mention, if you are just getting started, personally, I really like the warrior tree. Sword and shield is usually, it's a very safe way to go. You can block attacks, you can attack. Personally, I like that. Some might suggest going ranged. I like up close and personal. That's just me. Some of the other changes that came along with the update 8, and there are a lot that are oriented around the combat. The first one being the heavy attacks. So instead of just doing light attacks constantly, you can hold the attack button for basically double damage or a double stun buildup, and it's heavy. All melee weapons have it, and it is really, really strong. I like to use it especially if I have fully stunned an enemy and then I want to swap into like a hammer or a greatsword or, you know, one of the heavier hitting melee weapons. I like to bounce back and forth with that as far as having those weapons on my bar. The other major aspect of the change that was for update 8 as well as for the beginner guide is the iframes. The iframes are the dodge rolls. This is essentially exactly like Dark Souls, honestly. If you've ever played Dark Souls, this is straight up the key. You are offered a few invulnerability frames where you're able to dodge if you've timed it perfectly and avoid all damage that are coming from incoming attacks. Really, really critical to learn on big boss fights, but it can also help you navigate larger camp fights. That's a very big thing. Another couple of aspects that have changed is the enemy awareness system. Basically, they kind of go through, instead of just immediately toggling into a full-on attack, if you get near, they'll get a little kind of like wary and they'll try to find where you are, and then they'll start searching through like the area that they saw you or that they thought you were. And then if they find you, then it's combat. Now the idea is that you can kind of lure enemies out of the initial fight. You can lure them away and pick them off one by one. This works really well if you spec into the sneak attack, and you'll be able to reach out, attack them before they get close to you, and you'll deal a ton of damage, usually eliminate them depending on the difficulty of the enemy. And it works out better thinning out the enemies of the camp before you rush in and have to deal with 15 enemies. Update 8 also brought in a lot of gear progression. Now, that is one of the bigger aspects. This is kind of this is really important as far as your progression into the game. So armor, shields, ward rings, all these things are now upgradable with runes. Very similar to what they were previously, where you could upgrade weapons with runes. Now, again, it depends on who does what. The blacksmith is mainly focused on like the melee gear, the warrior gear. The huntress gets all the bow users, the ranger gear, I believe. The alchemist does the mage gear, and so on and so forth. So you find the follower, and that's basically who you're sticking with your build. Now, what's really cool is that you can recycle old gear into runes. Now, these runes are basically used as your main currency, and now you can get a lot more just with pieces of gear that you find or old pieces of gear that you were holding on to. Really recycle those and use them, because when you get new gear, the upgraded gear will have unique perks that push your skills past their skill tree cap. So for example, one skill might have a 3 cap or 3-point skill tree cap, and then some pieces of your gear push it to a 4 or to a 5. And this is honestly a really, really cool way to make your builds even that much more powerful, because it could mean the difference between 15% increased damage to 25 or 30% increased damage. So it's kind of like, don't wait around for the perfect gear, just start upgrading. The upgraded gear really makes a noticeable difference across the board. 10 for 10 would recommend. All right, now your followers. I'm just gonna briefly touch on these guys. As you get them through the story, it's essentially your hand-fed where they are, where you need to go, and what you need to do to get them. The blacksmith, the hunter, and the farmer are honestly the most important ones. And again, I'm going with that warrior build. And that's my like. Of course, you're going to have to get the alchemist and, you know, the carpenter and all the other ones as you go through, but The blacksmith and the hunter and the farmer really right there make exploration and everything else a heck of a lot better. I like to make a beeline for those. The farmer provides a lot of different ways that you can make really good food. Food is a critical aspect into this game. It allows you to have a number of buffs, which could make the difference between you having 1,000 HP and like 1,500. Maybe that's a little bit aggressive, but the melee damage or range damage or magic damage goes up from like an additional 15% to what you were already doing. So I like to focus on the blacksmith, the hunter, and the farmer, and then using them from there to upgrade your gear, upgrade your ranged capabilities, and have some food. And then from there, you'll be able to explore and be able to do what you need to. As I mentioned earlier, one of the bigger updates for 0.8 is the adventure sharing, where you're basically able to go out and see other players' adventures, their worlds. It's kind of like a preview of what they're building towards 1.0, but as a new player, you may not have known that this even exists. It's worth mentioning that it is pretty cool to see what other players are working on and what other players are doing. And it's 100% recommend you go and check that out. All right, so if you are just getting started with Enshrouded, this is kind of like the direction that I would kind of recommend it as an outline. This game is great for self-exploration and great mapping of your own, figuring out where you got to go and what you need to do. So one of the first things that I would recommend right out the gate, of course, is that very first session is to get out, build your first base, build the shelter, the flame altar and all that, get the blacksmith and work on some of the aspects there. On your next session, your next time that you sit down and play, you really push into the shroud, you really get into a lot of the different aspects of dealing with that. You clear out the first elixir well, which is highly recommended because then from there, you're able to upgrade the flame altar as well as get your skill point. And then you can see really where the skill tree goes and kind of like what you want to do. And again, I recommend the warrior build early on. That is just something that I very much enjoy. But the idea is that you're able to kind of see where you need to go. And then after that, your third, fourth, fifth session, I would either recommend getting the hunter or the farmer. I like the farmer, personally. I like my girl. She's pretty cool. And then really focus on the upgraded gear. And then, of course, the ancient spire. All of this is kind of handheld as far as like following the story and listening to your followers. Each one of these sessions, the whole point is that you feel like you've accomplished something, that something was done. You've moved the needle a little bit. And that's one of the beautiful things that I love about this game, is that it's just you're kind of advancing each time. You're not necessarily just grinding aimlessly. Now, I will say that I explored this game, and I've always explored this game just kind of my own pace. And I would always recommend, if that is the type of player that you like, and you like to just go and do it your own thing at your own pace, 10 for 10 would recommend Enshrouded. Is fantastic about it. This is a beautifully handcrafted world, and there is lots of things to do, and a little bit of self-exploration really sinks its teeth into you. I didn't want to necessarily tell you every intricate detail about what you're going to expect, because I want you to experience the game. I want you to go out there. I gave you like some kind of basics where the updates are and what's majorly changed, but this is where it is. And essentially that's your update 8 starter kit, honestly. Enshrouded is fantastic right now, especially if you are a new player. You know, like the combat has actual depth now, which is beautiful. We're not really too terribly far away from the 1.0 release, and it's going to be great. So I'm going to be covering this as we get closer to launch. 100%, I would recommend you to keep trying this game. If you do want to see some tips and tricks for playing Enshrouded, you can click this video here. As always, stay caffeinated, folks.